Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Carrow Road. Norwich City have been beaten 3-0 here tonight by Liverpool. It is a Carabao Cup third round exit for the Canaries on what was a night where Carrow Road was full and probably left wondering what might have been after Christos Scholis missed the first half penalty and Pierre Lees-Malou had a glorious opportunity to equalise just after half time. But again, we find ourselves sitting here talking about more defensive woe, about individual errors, about set piece issues. But let's start with probably the blinding obvious. This was better than Saturday. I'm not sure I'd label it a lot better, but it was better. So that's a positive to kick us off with. Norwich deployed a kind of a 3-5-2 tonight. It was more a 3-1-4-2 really, if we're being kind of pedantic about it, but it was a new system. First time we've seen a three at the back from Norwich since that final pre-season friendly against Newcastle, a game that they also lost 3-0. And there were, you can see the lineup there, Omobama Dele, Hanley and Gibson, the back three. And there was some signs actually, particularly in the second half of the first half, that this was a formation that could work and could grow. Norwich were having a lot more joy from an attacking sense. They were certainly competing a lot more in the middle portion of the pitch, and the back was not particularly great, if I'm being completely and brutally honest about it, although it was exposed and left without a lot of protection. So let's talk about that shape first and foremost. It did its job in kind of the first half, really, when it prevented Liverpool from enjoying a lot of the space that the three centre-backs occupied. It forced them wide. There were a lot of hopeful crosses with Norwich's back three, given the height between them. They're probably all over 6 foot. You would back them to clear headers. And for large portions of the first half, that was the case. We saw Liverpool work into crossing positions. They were fairly ponderous crosses, often would go over often from this left side, really, and they go over the head of Cade Gordon on the right, who's only 16 years old, not huge. And Norwich could then recycle and attempt to build. Norwich found Liverpool's press very suffocating, as a lot of teams do, to be fair. Worth noting that Liverpool made a huge number of changes. A lot of their big hitters, so to speak, were out. No Trent Alexander-Arnold, no Mo Salah, no Roberto Firmino, no Sadio Mane, no Thiago. We could go on. No Alisson Becker. No Virgil van Dijk, no Joel Matip, etc. So it was essentially a second-string Liverpool side consisting of a few experienced players: Oxlade-Chamberlain, Origi, Konate, who looked like he was playing in second gear for a lot of the game, to be frank. Joe Gomez played as well. So it was a Liverpool team that contained quality, but not of its usual standard, so to speak. Norwich also made 9 changes, so changes on both sides. And it's interesting to see Daniel use this game and utilise this game to experiment with a three at the back. They have done it before when they've been chasing games, and it's had some impact on occasion, but just leaves them looking exposed a lot of the time. And when we dig into the game, we'll probably get into a few more of those defensive errors. But what I would say is, I think a lot of the chances they conceded tonight were based on individual errors and individuals rather than Liverpool really exposing them tactically, which I didn't necessarily think was the case. But collectively, individually, they need to defend a lot better than they are doing at the moment, because this was a game of really fine margins when you look at the statistics that we'll delve into later, and yet Norwich have lost 3-0. So as we kind of said on Saturday, you cannot keep shipping goals. I mean, 6 goals conceded here in the last 2 games. Obviously, if you include this one, it's just simply not good enough at this level. Obviously, you can extend that further and add the 5 that they conceded in the first 2 games. It's not a particularly good start to the season for Norwich City from any perspective really, but certainly from a defensive perspective. Let's drill down into the goals then and the key moments. It starts after 4 minutes, really the worst start. Minamino scores the goal. It comes from a corner, a Shmikas corner, and really this is where zonal marking has a lot of criticism, because when it goes horribly wrong like this, it gets exposed and it looks pretty messy, to be honest. But probably 2 errors here, really. Origi beats Rupp in the initial contest. People will be saying, well, why is Rupp up against Origi? You have to think of it. The line closest to Norwich City's goal is designed to dominate aerially. The line in front of those, which consist usually of smaller players, is tasked with blocking off the players' runs, if so to speak. So you've got Lucas Rupp attempting to block off Divock Origi, yet because of the height differentials, you've got him also trying to compete for a header. he loses that, but because of kind of his struggle, Hanley then pushes forward to try and win that header. Someone who certainly you would associate with being a lot more able and having a lot more ability in the air to go and compete with that header. He loses it, and that's the crucial point. And because he loses it and is moved out of that sort of back line into the midfield line, that leaves Minamino in a so much space where he has time not just to turn and get a shot away, but also to do that in the 6-yard box and score. This looks incredibly messy, but it's probably individual errors within a wider zone of marking system. Probably Lucas Rupp initially didn't block off the run well enough, and then Grant Hanley, who raced out. If he probably had just held, he probably would have cleared Origi's flick on. So a little bit of frustration there, but Norwich City find themselves 1-0 down after 4 minutes. That's an extremely difficult start for any side, irrespective of the quality of player that Liverpool put out there to come back against this Liverpool side. And the way they press is relentless. It's tremendous and also really scary to watch, actually, because there was a moment just down this right side. Bali Mumba got the ball. And by the time he looked up, he was swarmed with 4 or 5 shirts. It's instant, it's suffocating, and it's effective. And that's why Liverpool have such a good side and why Jurgen Klopp has been so successful at this football club, because of the way they press in packs, the way they swarm, the way they condense spaces. Norwich found it very difficult to play through that pressing, probably the opening half of the first half, so to speak. But actually, in the second half of that first half, they really grew into it. They basically began to unlock Billy Gilmour on the ball, and he opened up a lot more opportunities for them in possession. And I think it's clear that kind of the issues with Billy Gilmour and the question marks around Billy Gilmour aren't around his technical qualities. There was a lovely moment where Norwich broke through the press. They found Gilmour. He slotted a beautiful pass in for Schollis, who'd peeled off around the left side. It was a low cross beyond, basically towards the back post. Ida and Mumba were both sliding in and were just unable to get there to tap it in. And that really would have changed the game. Again, it was a really good opportunity. And it essentially came from Norwich breaking Liverpool's press, finding Billy Gilmour. And that was kind of the recipe for how they got into the game. Billy Gilmour began to get on the ball. He looked a lot more effective in terms of how he orchestrated proceedings. And that helped Norwich City gain not just territory, but also momentum and a little bit of possession as well. And it's probably why Daniel Farke's down there feeling very frustrated about the moment that was to come, which was the opportunity. There's probably 2 opportunities the game turned and moved away from Norwich City. The first, obviously, is the penalty. If we move through that move, again, a wonderful touch from Bali Mumba to set, I think it was Gilmour, away. He finds Schollis. His shot stings the hands of Kelleher, who was very good tonight, actually sweeping off his line. Yanulis responds to it quickly and then gets bundled over by Connor Bradley, who I thought actually looked very good tonight. At right back for Liverpool, very young lad. Kind of one, every so often you get a young player, you scribble the name out of down. Certainly did his. He did concede the penalty, and this is where the dispute comes in. Schollis grabs the ball. Ida looked to me as if he was the designated penalty taker. There's a bit of back and forth between the two. It ends up that Schollis takes the penalty. Daniel Farke has subsequently come out and said that he wasn't the designated penalty taker. He labelled him naive. He said that it was a mistake that he wouldn't replicate again in his career, but he kind of told an anecdote of when he did a similar thing when he was a young striker. He grabbed the ball and then subsequently missed, told he got the biggest fine of his career, but didn't replicate it. And he said even if Schollis would have converted the penalty, he would have had to have also had a word with him after the game. So Schollis steps up and it's a poor penalty straight down the middle. Kelleher saves. The rebound falls to Pierre Lees-Malou. He can't get a shot away. Then it falls to Ida, whose shot is actually blocked, and Liverpool are allowed to clear. And from that moment, really, it felt like an opportunity for Norwich to gain momentum had been lost. And then you're fighting back what essentially they have worked so hard over the last 25 minutes to create in terms of momentum and territory and dominance in central positions and attacking chances as well. And when we talk about this formation and maybe the benefits of it tonight, there was some lovely stuff that Norwich City did going forward. It's just the other end, as always seems to be the case with Norwich City, defensively, where the issue stemmed. And that continued after the break. They had a wonderful chance, 2 minutes after the break. Yanulis robs Bradley. He feeds Yanulis, doesn't quite get the pass right. Pierre Lees-Malou, in real time, it looked like Lees-Malou had just come in and absolutely walloped it over the bar. Watching the replay back now, there's a slight touch from Schollis, which I think If you look at the strides that Lace Malou was taking, they were big strides. He was getting ready to essentially hammer the ball into the back of the net, it seems. That little touch just moves him off balance ever so slightly, and enough just for him to arch his back and get his foot underneath the ball to put it over the bar. But a really poor miss, really. And you can't help but wonder, again, we talk about fine margins. You just can't help but wonder what would happen if Christos Solis didn't get a little toe onto that ball, but he was really stretching, just trying to get a touch to go it, because he would have been through on goal, and he struck it off balance. And then from there, really, it was all about Liverpool regaining possession, and they got their second goal. Shimikas cross again. This one is pretty bad, to be honest. Grant Hanley, I think he did similar at the weekend, actually. Goes to meet the ball from the cross. Looks like he completely misjudges it, or is positionally unaware. The ball flies over his head. Ben Gibson, in fairness, at the time I thought it was poor defending from Ben Gibson. I've watched it back. I think probably an expectation that Hanley clears the ball at the near post, but equally a lack of protection from the midfielders. See, sort of Gordon is drifting in, and he's in so little space. I think Gibson just has his eye on him as well. Gets caught in kind of two minds. Do I go and mark Origi? Do I go and push out to Gordon? In the end, he doesn't really do either. And Origi is left 6 yards out of a free header to he uses all of his neck muscles to pull it back across the goalkeeper and into there. 2-0, game over, really. It was about game management from there, really, for Liverpool. Their third goal, they capped it off after 80 minutes. I think it was Connor Bradley who dispossessed Yanulis. He found Oxlade-Chamberlain. Nice little flick round the corner to Minamino. And then we talk about quality in the box. Norwich City have very little of it at the moment. Minamino just sits down on Ramadeli. It's a really deft little touch. Kind of fakes to shoot. On Ramadeli sort of slides in to go and block the effort, and then he just sweeps it past Angus Gunn and into the net for free. It was, kind of rounded off a very difficult evening for Norwich City from a defensive perspective. Was this better? Yes, but of course, as I said right at the top, that's a low bar given what we saw on Saturday. Do I think Daniel Farke will stick with this for Everton? Yes, I do, and I got that indication from his post-match comments as well. I think he felt he saw enough in terms of what Norwich City did from an offensive perspective, and I was a little bit concerned because essentially when you move to a three at the back, you lose an attacking player. If you think Norwich played a 4-3-3, they only had two really up there tonight. Lace Malou was probably the midfielder, given a bit more licence to support the attacks. I felt he was neat and tidy in places, but really the same problems. Just gets lost a little bit in moments of the game, and that's somewhat frustrating. But you look at the statistics: possession 47-53 shots. Norwich have 13. Liverpool had 18. Liverpool only had 3 shots on target this evening, scored all 3 of them. Norwich City had 5 and were unable to convert. And for those of you who like expected goals, I know it's not for everyone, they're fairly even as well. Norwich registering 1.54 and Liverpool 1.84. So that gives you an indication, really, of just maybe how clinical Liverpool were, but equally the defensive mistakes that Norwich City make. And again, we're kind of talking about the same things, the same narrative, the same structures, the same arcs with Norwich City. It's that brittleness at the back, that fragility at the back. And until they improve that, it doesn't matter it doesn't really matter what they do with base formation or how they attack or dominating the middle of the pitch, because ultimately in the Premier League, teams have too much. I know this wasn't a Premier League game, but Premier League teams have too much quality that you make an error, you offer them an invitation, they will take it. And that was exposed at the highest level by a Liverpool team today without many of its kind of main protagonists. And that really is the scary thought. Of course, they go to Everton on Saturday. That's a slightly different prospect. I mean, they're going to be playing with Salomon Rondon up front. Calvert-Lewin is someone who terrifies me, to be honest. So probably some saving grace that he's not going to be in the side. And Rondon probably isn't a striker in the same way which Norwich had to deal with tonight in terms of Origi. He wants to back in, he wants the ball to feet, he wants to out-muscle players. That might suit a Grant Hanley. That might be the reason where Grant Hanley does keep his place in this side, because at the moment, and certainly on the evidence of tonight, and of course the context of Saturday, he's probably the one that you'd be looking at now to potentially dip out if you're looking to reintroduce Ozan Kabak, who of course did not feature tonight. Daniel Farke left him out. He left Matthias Norman out as well. In terms of ratings, I think Billy Gilmour probably the standout for Norwich tonight. I think it would be difficult to push anyone above a 6, to be honest. Maybe a 7 for Gilmour, but I think I'd be being very kind if I gave him a 6. Trying to think who else. it's very difficult. I think I'll probably go for a lot of fives, to be honest. Adam Eder felt got his opportunity tonight. No Josh Sargent in the 18. Timo Pukki came on. Stephen Kenny was in the director's box, the Ireland manager, watching this game. I didn't feel that Adam really got involved too much, didn't really cause too much of a threat. There were a couple of nice runs in behind, but there were also moments, and this probably sums up where he is at the moment, where he's just looking at him to use his body and hold the ball up to get Norwich up the pitch a little bit, and he just got completely rolled by Kanate and Gomez, who, as I mentioned before, were largely playing in second gear tonight. So that was a little bit of a shame. Christos Scholes is, although he missed the penalty, there is just there's excitement when he gets the ball. There's unpredictability, and I'm not totally convinced that he knows what he's going to do a lot of the time. But there's an excitement, there's a spark, there's an X factor about him. And if Norwich City can mould him into the player that Daniel Farke wants, then they've certainly got a real talent there. But again, kind of faded out a little bit tonight. Midfield three of Gilmour, Lees-Malou. Yeah, it was okay. It was okay. I think what today has kind of shown and exposed is that Norwich City are pretty wedded to playing a flat three in midfield. Obviously, how their roles change within that probably differs somewhat. Gilmour and Rupp often kind of occupied a more defensive sitting, and Lees-Malou was given the licence to go forward. But they have to do it as a collective. They're not at the moment protecting the back three enough. If it is going to be a back three, they weren't protecting the back four enough in a 4-3-3. That fundamentally is what has to change for Norwich City going forward, because until they do that, until they limit the spaces, I'm watching Norwich at the moment. One, there's a lot of pacing around, a lot of walking in moments of transition where their opponents are really attacking them with pace and purpose. But equally, there's a lot, and I mean a lot of space between the defensive line and the midfield line at the moment. And unless they really condense that and work on the spaces they have across the pitch, then they are going to concede goals, and players are going to, like Ben Gibson did for the second goal, get caught in two minds as to where to mark. Because if you're being uber critical, that's where you want a midfielder just to come and stand in front of them to protect him, to know that he has Gordon, so he can then push on and get Yanulis to tuck in as well, and you become more solid as a unit. And it just feels like they're a little bit off that at the moment. And in fairness, Daniel Farke now needs to decide which way he wants to go in terms of, is it a 3, is it a 4? Because the constant changing of both personnel and of shape won't aid that particularly. So, yeah, full steam ahead to Everton. I think we'll see the 3 again. They've now got a few more days to work on it and to work on the things that Daniel Farke has seen tonight, to work on the things I spoke about in terms of distancing, to on individual mistakes and quality, and sharpening up their play. There were a couple of times in the first half where they had really ponderous possession kind of around their own area and weren't able to progress it. So, look, I sit here tonight feeling a little bit more positive. Do I feel like what I've seen tonight that's going to be enough for Norwich to stay up? No, not particularly. But look, compared to Saturday, it was a extremely small step in the right direction. Not big enough to mean anything substantial, but better. And hopefully now, if this is the answer to their attacking issues, they can just sort out what's behind them. It's just doing that and hoping that they manage to achieve that at a point that isn't too late for them. Which at the moment I really fear, because we're all sat here in September and it feels like we know the way this is going to go. Anyway, Pinken.com, the place to go for all the analysis and reaction to this game. We've got Daniel Farke quotes, player ratings, all the usual stuff going up there. I spoke to Billy Gilmour post-match as well, so you'll be able to check that chat out there as well. Thank you, as ever, for all your support on the content at the moment. I really do appreciate it. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and leave a like as well. Lots of video content coming your way ahead of the trip to Merseyside. We'll be at Goodison Park on Saturday. Hope to see as many of you there as possible. It's going to be a long old trip. Let's hope these supporters get rewarded. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon.